from there. But however long it goes, we'll just kind of organically find ourselves coming to an end. So, with that being said, shall we get into it, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Yes, let's go.
Let's get into it, man. So we're all here. You know, everyone's getting ready for auditions. Next month is Juilliard. Some of the MFA programs are next month. Everything's exciting. So let's just jump right into it with John. Well, actually, let's have John introduce himself. For those of the audience who doesn't know you, share a little bit about. Give us some context. Where do you live? What's your story? Tell us about yourself.
Cool. Originally from Texas, Texarkana, Texas, which is the northeast corner of the state. We're close to Arkansas. I lived there until I was 18, and then I moved to New York and was in New York until 2011. I went to NYU for undergrad, did my BFA there, and then in 2011 I moved to LA. And worked in film and television for about 5 years. I always thought it was 6 years, but it was just 5 years before I auditioned for Yale in 2016. And then I got in and I moved to Connecticut for 3 years.
Look at that.
Yeah, which was a huge surprise and a big shift. And then I graduated in 2019 and ended up moving back to LA. There was a brief moment where I was like, oh, am I going to New York? Everybody from my class is going to New York. Not everybody, but a large majority. But my husband lives in LA and I lived out there for 5 years and it really does feel like home. So yeah, I ended up going back.
Nice.
And I'm there. So, yeah.
Brandon, were we in New York at the same time John was going to NYU?
Oh, what year was this, John?
I graduated in 2010.
Oh yeah. So
yeah.
we were in school from 05 to 09.
Oh wow, yeah. I was in school from
09.
10. Yeah.
Y'all didn't hang out. I didn't see there. John. I don't know about you, Brandon.
Yeah, I don't know if we saw John. Not sure.
Yeah.
Might have been busy acting. I don't know.
There was a bunch of people around.
Yeah.
A bunch of things going on during those years. Oh man.
Cool. So what's next? So let's get into it. We're preparing for drama school. Let's talk about preparation, right? So you could talk about Yale or you could talk about NYU in general, or you could talk in general. What was your preparation like?
Oh God. So I mean, it's a lot, right? I mean, like that's a really big question. And I think I moved to New York in 2005 and I started studying like professionally training. And so like I had all of that before auditioning for Yale, for instance, in 2016. So what is that? 11 years, 10, 11 years of training. So in terms of preparation, I mean, maybe I should start with like the monologues that I did and like how long.
Yeah, talk about your monologues. How'd you find them, and like how'd you decide that those are the ones? And yeah, how'd you work on them?
I also want to know like why did you choose these schools?
Yes.
Like choose Yale or to go back to grad school in general, or
well both. Or choose Yale. You went to grad school, and then you also came from NYU. Like in terms of when you go to grad school, it's because maybe you feel like you need something more or you missed something. Like, want to know about that. Tell us everything, John.
Yeah. I felt like, so I'd been in LA, I guess it was probably 2012, 2013, something like that. And I'd been studying with this teacher named Larry Moss. And he studied with Stella Adler when she was alive and with Meisner when he was alive. He's, I guess, in his mid 70s, maybe early 80s. Something.
He's got a great book on acting. I forget what it's called, but it's by Larry Moss.
He's amazing. And I realized, like, when I was at NYU, I was in the Meisner studio for my primary training, which takes up 2 years. And then for my additional advanced training, I ended up going to ETW, which is the experimental theater wing. Yes. And so it's like Grotowski-based work and all of that. And I really loved it, but I never ended up doing classical theater. The classical studio, which is also a year-long program. Louis Sheeter is the head of it. Daniel Spector taught there as well. And so when I was studying with Larry, I think somebody was doing a scene from some Shakespeare play, and I was like, I really have this blind spot. with classical text, and I'm afraid of it. I'm intimidated by it. I don't know if I would feel comfortable auditioning for something like that, and I don't want to feel that way as an actor. So that was one of the major reasons that after working for 5 years in the business, I was like, you know what, this is something that I think I might want to do, audition and apply to grad school.
It's so good. It's so good. I think it's so good that you're able to acknowledge like, there's more that I need, or there's more that I want to get to the place, or to produce the type of art that you want to produce. So you knew that you needed something, and being specific with that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to be afraid of anything, you know, in my work. And I want to be able to, you learn from so many different aspects. And at that point in 2015, 2016, I had studied with a number of teachers in New York and LA. And I'd sort of learned at that point, like, you learn so much from each individual. Like, each individual has a set of like great skills, the things that they're really good at. And I'm like, oh, I've taken this from this teacher, and I've taken that from that teacher.
Right.
And so I was like, you know, there's this hole in my own work, and I want to be able to expand myself. And so that's sort of what propelled me towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk monologues now. So you've kind of decided to go to grad school. You have some experience under your belt with maybe scenes, monologues, productions, material, right? How did you go about, like, what was the activity that you engaged in to search for your pieces? Online? Did you go to libraries? Did you talk to mentors? How did you find those pieces? So
let me just go through the individual pieces, because I sort of have a different journey with each one of them. So Andre's Mother by Terrence McNally was one of the two pieces that I did first in all of my auditions. It wasn't a backup piece. And I guess I first read that when I was at NYU. I had done like this, I'd made this sort of summer commitment that I was going to read as many plays as possible in as many genres as possible.
Nice.
And and so I had read that when I was sort of doing that search. And so I started working on it probably in 2009, I would say. And so it wasn't until 2016 that I auditioned. So that's about 7 years of knowing that piece. I think of all of the pieces, that one was the one I'd known for the longest period of time. Also, I was in a couple of classes in LA, so I actually had like a practice ground to test out the material. So I brought it in a lot and was able to like get feedback on it, and also like see what worked and what didn't work, and also have the pressure of audition nerves. Like have a large audience in front of me doing this piece, and see how that affected this piece and other pieces as well. Because that was something that I sort of thought about. I really suffer from a lot of performance anxiety in all of my auditions. And so I wanted to make a plan that allowed me to feel as grounded in the room as possible, based on like what piece I start with and then what piece I follow after that. And so I kind of set it up that way. So that was Andre's Mother. The second piece that I did was actually Sebastian 3/4 from Twelfth Night. And that was suggested to me by a coach. I knew, because I was not very familiar with classical material, that I wanted to work with someone who had a lot more experience and knowledge than me. And so my Alexander teacher in LA at the time, Jean-Louis Rodrigue, recommended a friend and professor at UCLA, Paul Wagar. And so I did a bunch of sessions with him, and he had suggested Sebastian. So that piece,
Sebastian, is that the it is the air, this is the air, that is the glorison. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just making sure.
Yeah. And
what drew you to that? I'm curious.
Well,
do you remember? Or did you just were like, yeah, okay, if you're giving this to me, I'll do it? Or did you actually have some sort of response to it? Did you really feel like, this is cool, I'll do this?
I liked the funness of it. Honestly, I thought it was a really good contrast to some of the other pieces. Like, I tend to gravitate towards really dark, sad,
Me too.
angry material.
I
like,
do
let
too.
me weep on the floor forever.
Yes.
So I was like, I need something light and funny. Paul, we got to work on this. So he was making suggestions in that way, and I really responded to the relationship there, and with Sebastian, and I thought it was interesting and it was fun, and so that's kind of what like the confusion and the lightness of it was sort of what drew me to it.
Nice. So yeah, you got 2 pieces. Where were you at that point?
I had a third piece. I pretty much had the third and fourth piece also because I knew them from previous training as well. So I had done a play called Cock by Mike Bartlett in LA, a production I guess back in 2014. And so I'd had a bunch of performances under my belt with this character. I really loved the material. Again, it was dark comedy. It was comedic, which I really needed. And it was a really great piece. So I was like, oh, this is a backup. It has an accent, so I was a little worried about that, but I feel super comfortable in that accent. What
was the accent?
It's a British, like,
okay.
I guess.
Okay, there you go.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. So it's nothing too extreme, and something that I can improvise in as well. So I feel like super confident with that. But yeah, it was great. And like, I spent a lot of time actually, especially with this piece, because this piece sort of starts at with a lot of stakes. And so I was like, okay, well, if he asks me to do that, he or she, the auditors ask me to do this piece third, I'm going to need to be able to like jump into it immediately, right? And so I really worked on how I could transition in a really short period of time. And I actually kind of talk about this experience in the video that we released a couple of days ago, because like I had been auditioning in film and television for 5 years, and I'd certainly been told like, you wouldn't want to release sound or do anything like too crazy in the room because it would seem green or unprofessional or whatnot. And I mean, thinking about it now, I'm not even sure I would want to do that nowadays. But because this is an audition for theater, because it was an audition for school, I felt a lot more freedom and permission to really do whatever it was that I needed in order to give my best performance. And so I like released sound and sort of screamed, and that sort of gave me the launch that I needed in order to jump into this, because the circumstances are I'm pretty angry and upset with my boyfriend sort of towards the end of the play.
Well, and also, this is a third piece, right? It's not like you went in with your initial 2 pieces and were like, hi, how are you? Like you were asked to do a third piece. And so,
they'd seen some work.
Yeah, they kind of liked what they had seen. And so you had a little bit more leeway. Like Brandon, you were asked to do a third piece too, right?
Oh yeah, I was asked to. I almost thought I was asked to do all my fourth piece, but no. Every room I did 3 pieces. Did Before It Hits Home, Wendell, and then I did. Oh my gosh, Jedediah Schultz, Laramie Project, and Othello. Those are the 3. I never got to do my Romeo, which is good because I didn't know it that well.
Awesome, worked out for you.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so you've got these pieces. You're feeling like you're getting enough coaching on them, and you're having a good work session, and you're prepared. And now you go into the room. Let's actually get into the room, unless there's something else you want to cover. But I'm really excited to hear about like when you walked in for the first time. Obviously, you have excitement, you have nerves. How are you feeling? What's your mindset going in? And then like tell us kind of what happens.
Okay, so mindset. I've been working for 5 years, right? And I had been auditioning for 5 years, a lot. And so I had been rejected a lot. And I think I was thinking about it before we started the call. And I honestly think that helped me, because it put me in a mindset of like, okay, we'll see what happens. I sort of treated it like any other pilot or episodic audition that I would go into.
So many people talk about that. Brandon and I talk about that too, like that, like not giving 2 shits.
Yeah, it's just not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's understanding that most of your career is going to be auditioning. Most of your career is also going to be no. And most of the time, it also has to do nothing with your talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's great.
yeah, it's not go in there and just do your work, do what you prepared to do to the best that you can do it. Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think that was pretty much how I went into these auditions. And if I had auditioned right out of undergrad, I definitely wouldn't have had that mindset. It really would have been an all or nothing sort of situation for me. And I think when you do that, you set yourself up for failure, because you can't have the physical ease and freedom that you need to focus on your performance. There's so much other, you're wanting to impress the auditors and like make sure that they know how good you are. There are all this other noise that gets in the way of actually accomplishing your goal, which is portraying this character as truthfully as you possibly can and as fully as you possibly can. And so having had those years to work before going back, I honestly never really thought I would go to grad school. It wasn't something that was on my radar. When I finished undergrad, I was like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
Dunzo.
Yeah, a lot of like, ripping you open and tearing you down and then building you back together. And, it was a huge transition for me. And I'm from a small town in Texas, and like moving to New York and being in this like completely different environment and culture, it was a huge shock for me. So after graduating, I was like, okay. And it wasn't until years later that I really felt like, you know what, I want to get more than what I'm getting now. From like a class here or a class there. I want like a full program and immerse myself in that. Yeah, so that was sort of my mindset. And then actually, so Yale was definitely my top choice. I've sort of always wanted to go there since I was a little kid. But being smart, I was like, well, I should diversify and sort of like apply to a number of schools, not put all of my eggs in one basket. And so I did that. And then after all was said and done, I had set up, Yale was the very last audition. And I think I did that on purpose so that I had plenty of time to kind of like feel how it was going to go, right? With other auditions, so that by the time I got to the school that I really wanted to go to, I sort of like knew how it was going to happen and felt more confident. And then of course I had set it up for Monday because I did my auditions in San Francisco, and a lot of the audition tours, they'll do like New York and then Chicago and then somewhere on the West, like San Fran,
and different coasts.
And so I had set up a few for like Saturday and Sunday, and then Yale was going to be on Monday. And of course, I got a pilot audition for that Monday. I was like,
of course.
Oh, okay.
Right.
After all of this work and like writing that statement of purpose and like all of this stuff, all of this preparation, I'm not even going to get to apply to the school that I want to. Thankfully, obviously, I did. I was able to switch it to a different day. I ended up having to do two on the same day, but one was like early in the morning, and then Yale was the very last session of that day. And I think, to answer your question about mindset, I think that also helped. Like I had done an audition earlier in the day, and my husband had come with me, and so we had this time in the afternoon, and I was, at this point, it was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I was really hungry. So he was like, let's just get some pizza and go hang out in the park. And so I was like, okay. So we just got a couple of slices and laid down in the sun. And it was really nice. And I think that can also contributed to my ease in the room, because at that point I was like, okay, well, whatever, let's just see what happens.
That's great. I think some people are able to, what I think a good takeaway there for those who are watching is that John kind of followed his instinct. You were just in the moment. You weren't overthinking it. You weren't like, well, if I go get pizza, maybe that will put me in an easy place, and then I'll be in an easy, then you're kind of stressing yourself out. Or you're thinking like, well, if I go get the pizza, will that tire me down, and then I won't be in a good. He wasn't overthinking it, right? So that's what I'm getting from you, and that's what we hear from other people too, because other people who are doing the opposite of what you're doing and still have the great results, where they actually are super zoned in. They're, kind of got the earbuds in, or they're doing physical vocal warm-ups, and they're like totally paying attention to the moment, and that eases their frame of mind.
Yeah.
Whereas so you got to do what's right for you as the individual, and just go ahead and breathe through that, and not try to, like, John's not trying to restrict any of his impulses as he's preparing and walking to the room. Am I right?
Yeah.
You use that energy.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think, you know, I wouldn't have had that insight about myself if I hadn't been auditioning a lot. Like I had the opportunity to go in rooms and feel what my personal response is to that anxiety. Because like you said, not everyone reacts in the same way. And so, you know thyself, you really need to know how you respond to those stimuli before you get into that situation so that you can kind of combat the obstacles that might get in your way, whatever those obstacles are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, were they friendly when you walked in? What were they asking? Or was it more just like you were just another number and then you left? Like, how did it go?
I can tell you how it goes. I don't remember if they were friendly or not.
Cool.
I'm doing it and I'm doing it, right? So like, but I do know that one stage manager from the MFA program comes with the 2 faculty members who do the audition tour for Yale. And they sign you in when you get there out in the hallway. And then they, they invite you into the room and they introduce you. And for me, Ron Van Loo was my auditor. And so I went in and I did my first piece, which was Andre's Mother. And it was sort of serendipitous. It was like we were in this room that the ceiling was sort of slanted on one side and it was all glass windows. And this piece is supposed to be out in Central Park. So I had a view of the outdoors and I was able to use that. It just like all of these things that sort of made it feel like it was meant to be. It was really beautiful. And so that piece went really well. I felt really emotionally full and connected and sobbing on the floor sort of moment. And then I switched to Sebastian, and then after that he asked for the 3rd piece, which I did Cock, and then the 4th piece, which was Hamlet. And he was super nice about it, and I felt like really good about all of the work, and so then at that point I left the room and went back outside, and I can't remember if they asked me to wait. That was the initial audition. And then you have an end of hour callback and then you have an end of day callback. But because I was the very last session of the day, I think they were sort of squished together because I just remember like going outside and waiting. There was one other person there who was like, yeah, one other person who had been called back. And they went in, and so I sort of waited for them to do their thing, and then I went back in. So it felt like I went back in almost immediately and did the pieces. I did Andre's Mother and Cock again for Ron and also for Walton, who was the other auditor. Walton Wilson is the department chair of the acting program and also the first-year voice teacher. So I did both of the pieces again for them in the other room. And then they really liked that, and they asked me to go back outside and wait again. And so I went outside and waited again. And I guess that was for the end of day callback. And so I went back in, and at that point they asked me to sing. And I was trying to remember what I sang, and I don't even remember because at that point I was so high.
I was gonna say, did you just block it out?
Trauma. That's trauma.
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
That's pure trauma.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. It was like I was just so like at 100. I probably sang "Where's the Girl" from the Scarlet Pimpernel. It's sort of a ballad for like a lyric baritone. It's something that I know really well and I like. And then I did an interview. So like I sang and then I sat down with both of them at a table. And at that point they had my statement of purpose and they were chatting with me about myself and my background and things like that. And that went really well. For a while, they were both super friendly. And then at the end of that, they handed me a letter with like Yale stationery and that sort of thing, saying that I had made it to the end of the day and that they would notify me by email if I make it to callback weekend.
Okay, so they had a callback weekend that was separate from that day.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And some schools do that, where they kind of have like a full day callback for anyone they want to see that they saw that day. They want to see them again. Cool. And then I guess they inform those folks if they're going to get a callback to some sort of weekend or extra day.
Yeah.
Cool.
So John, now at this point, so you've already got your BFA from NYU and now you're auditioning for your MFA at Yale. So you've also had 5 years of understanding what it's like to audition, presenting work in front of people, getting feedback, getting direction, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Did anything happen during your auditions that took you off guard? Anything that was surprising to you? Anything that's like, oh, wow, didn't prepare for that?
I don't think so. I never really felt that anyone was trying to trick me or anything like that. They were all incredibly supportive of my work. I mean, I will say in the callback weekend, I didn't feel great about my monologue. So they ask you to do the monologues again. So the callback weekend is once you get notified by email whether or not you get accepted to that piece of the puzzle or that piece of the audition. I think it's roughly 36 people that they call back from all over the country, and they fly everybody to New Haven, and they put you up in a hotel, and you're there for the weekend. And they split the 32 to 36 into two groups. And I asked to be in group B just because of scheduling, like auditioning and stuff and leaving from LA. So I ended up flying out on Friday and getting there Friday evening. And then they take you out to dinner, like the students take you out to dinner, and then they take you to a show at the Cabaret with like current students. The Cabaret,
Jeez.
Yale Cabaret is a completely student-run organization, and people from all over the community come and watch and eat dinner, and students produce productions. And it's not just the actors who are involved, it's the entire community. So directors, and like we often have dramaturgs being actors in these productions. It's a really cool venue, and a lot of really innovative stuff came out of there. So like actors would write plays, or an actor wanted to direct something. It gave you an opportunity to put on different shoes than what your necessary discipline was. So anyway, we went to see that. And then after that, there was a party that they were having for both groups. And group A had already done all of their auditions, but group B had their auditions on Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah, I was like,
huh.
I'm gonna make an appearance and I'm gonna go home and sleep. So I like did a round and then like went back to the hotel room, and they had you rooming with a person in the other group. So like I had a group A guy who was with me. And so then the next day you get up. So that for me was Saturday, and you have a whole day of auditions. The morning starts with doing your monologues again for a larger portion of the faculty. Let's see, with the panel. The panel was James Bundy, who is the dean of the school. Walton and Ron were both there again. Jessica Wolf, who is the Alexander teacher, was there. I want to say it was just those four. So you go in, you do your pieces, there's an order for the group. And then after everybody's finished, you have a little bit of a break, you do lunch. And then we ended up taking, I think it was 3 classes. With 3 of the faculty there. We did a clown class with Chris Bays, which was amazing, and really very much needed after, like, everybody was so tense in the group because everyone's so nervous, and then like you are given the permission to like just be crazy and scream, and so it just sort of like explodes. It was really, at least for me, it was a really good release. And then there was a voice class, and I think an Alexander class as well, because we were doing dancing and stuff like that. So it was like movement based and then voice based. And then like Chris had us do, he does this a lot where you're singing songs, you improvise songs, and he gives you a title and you like create this piece. And so we did that. And of course it's like, for me, it was very nerve wracking. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and you kind of like get to work with the other members of your group, and a large portion of those people ended up being my classmates for 3 years. And then
nice.
And then at the very end of the day, you do another interview. And this is with the full panel again, and you go in and you talk about why you're interested in the school and what you're looking for in training and that sort of thing. And then you're done. And then after that, there's like a pizza party with all of the current students, and the students do a Q&A. So you get an idea of like what it's like to go to the school, and you can ask them questions. And like, I had a couple of friends who had gone to Yale years before, a friend who had gone like maybe 10 years before, maybe even 15 years before. And so I knew how grueling the classwork was, and so I was just curious to like ask things like that. And
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then they what?
And then the next day, Sunday, before you fly back, they do a Q&A with the faculty, and they talk about financial aid and all of that kind of stuff as well. So it really, you're like completely immersed for 2.5 days. It's
Yeah.
a whirlwind of activity.
That's the goal. I know Juilliard implemented a callback weekend when we were there. I think we didn't go through a callback weekend, but
oh, wow.
Definitely while we were students there, they implemented.
I think it was our third year.
Yeah, which was cool. I mean, anyway, my question to you was, you do keep kind of talking about the nerves that you had, and I think that does represent how much you care. I think if you're not excited and you don't have those nerves, there's something missing there. But everybody's excited, everybody's nervous.
Stakes aren't high enough.
Exactly. And so my question to you is, how did you handle like being authentically you and like, let's say, doing fun exercises and, being you and doing your work confidently with the racking nerves?
I mean,
did you just overcome it, or did you tell yourself something, or did you have guidance beforehand?
No, I mean, oftentimes I would have to sort of like sidestep midway. So an example, which is also in the video, is so on Saturday morning when we had to do the monologues again for a larger portion of the faculty, I went in and I started with Andre's mother, and I was really nervous. Before, we're in this hotel called Study, and a friend of mine, Aaron, who ended up being in class with me, I was like headed down the elevator because I was like, there's got to be a conference room or something, because I couldn't warm up in my room because I had a roommate who was still sleeping because he was in group A, and so he was done, he was finished, and I didn't want to wake him up. He's got
wake him up like, listen,
get out of here, pal.
I gotta prepare.
I didn't want to be an asshole, so I was like, okay, there's got to be a conference room, right? So I went down, and there was, and as I was going down, Aaron was in the elevator with me, and I was like, do you want to like come into the I'm like going to go prepare, like maybe do some rest position and then like some vocal warm up and that kind of thing, just to like get grounded. And he was like, yeah, sure. So we ended up like going in there and kind of like preparing together. So that was one way, one strategy that I used to kind of like help get grounded and get connected to the material. But then when I did the pieces anyway, I still felt not great.
Kind of worked, kind of didn't.
Yeah, I was like, I did Andre's mother, and it wasn't nearly as full. I was just so nervous that I just wasn't breathing as well,
Yeah.
And so halfway through, it's sort of like that passage in oh God, what's the Stanislavski My Life in Art? Is that the book? My Life in Art. Where he talks about, he's like up there, he's doing some Shakespeare, I can't remember what it is, and he's like, this is going terribly, it's going terribly, and then suddenly he just gets so angry at himself that it kind of releases, and then suddenly he doesn't know what happened because he got into his body and out of his head. And I sort of had a similar experience there. I was like aware that I was sort of holding back, and so I just got kind of pissed, and I just sort of let that be the truth. And so that's how I was able to be authentically myself, despite the nerves that I had.
Beautiful.
And then after that, like as I was transitioning to Sebastian, I was like, okay, I spoke to myself out loud in the room. I was like, okay, John, get active, go. And everybody started laughing at me. And I was like, oh, this is okay. And it actually,
do what you got to do.
Yeah. And that put me at ease as well. It was like, at that point you get that far, and you've auditioned that much, it's like, do what you need to like get ready. Yeah. So it's like, even though I wasn't successful in overcoming the nerves, I didn't go in and was like, it was perfect from the moment, from the first moment, all of that. It wasn't, but I was still able to, get back onto the tracks, get back on the train and go towards the direction that I wanted to.
Brandon, so me and Brandon, well, obviously we did not have like, college experience. Like Brandon went to high school. I came right out of high school. So did you, Brandon, have any, obviously you had nerves. We both did. Like, how did you deal with that? How did you deliver good work?
Delivering good, well,
with the nerves, you know what I'm saying?
No, right. But like for me, auditioning for Juilliard, like the pressure was taken off a little bit because again, like I've told this story on college videos, but I didn't know anything about Juilliard. So I auditioned for it like I was auditioning for any other program, like another acting class, another, just, oh yeah, school. And so I had removed for me the doom or the dark cloud of like, oh no, this like huge institution. So I think that definitely helped me with my nerves. But otherwise, all other schools I auditioned for that I did know about, I was nervous for. It was more just focusing on me, focusing on what I came to do, like, what are the pieces I'm about to do and why I'm here. Like I said this before in other videos, is really why am I here? Reminding yourself, why am I here? To do what? What's the goal? Always to have fun. Then it's to put in good work, and show them really who you are. That's that helps me. Why am I here? Why am I here?
Nice. Yeah, it's something that everybody deals with. I remember for sure I didn't have music or anything in my ears, but I just remember being with my best friends, and I did isolate myself in a friendly manner, but I was pretty much just kind of zoned in. And I remember thinking that's a good question, Brandon, by the way. I would really appreciate that if I was auditioning this year, that question of like, why am I here? Why am I here? I remember what was going through my head was I was just trying to reinforce the confidence that I have in myself, because I was feeling slight feelings of intimidation, I'm like, wow, okay, wow. But I would try to have self-talk that was like, I'm ready. I know I'm ready.
Especially when you know how much you prepared.
When you know how much you've prepared, you have to have the ability to talk to yourself, and talk yourself into confidence. And like, I remember walking into the room just feeling great, even though like I was just buzzing. When they gave me the floor, I felt like this is what you're gonna see it right now.
Yeah.
And I think
something that I'm hearing.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to talk about a through line. Something that I'm hearing is that we all walked in there, and regardless of what was going on inside, either emotionally, mentally, we tapped in and we gave our best. We actually rose to the occasion and did our best. You did your work. You found this confidence, and you showed the work that you had been preparing.
Yes.
Yeah.
John, what? I guess let's talk about tips. We're wrapping up here in the next few minutes. Now that you know, obviously, who's watching and you understand what they're going through, can you synthesize any tips for someone who is about to audition, based on your experience and your wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I think like once you've chosen pieces, I think it's invaluable to get them in front of as many people as possible. I think it's really, really helpful to have coaches look at them and give you advice and whatnot and feedback, critique. But it's also really helpful to create mock audition situations for yourself. So that you sort of have that experience, especially if you're right out of high school, for instance, and you haven't done a lot of auditioning, it can be really helpful to kind of see what your habits are, and so that you can not be overcome by those obstacles when you get to the day. I think that would be really helpful.
We have a question, and this might be more for Brandon and I. Is the process for Juilliard's callback weekend similar?
For the most part, like, again, top 40, I believe it's flown back to New York City from all over the country. You're put up in the dorms. You're usually paired up with some current students, just to be like some facilitators, like getting you around the building, showing you where to go, talking to you, giving a sense of the school. You do go through a weekend of classes. I know they do movement, they do speech, they do some voice work. I definitely do an acting class.
A lot of yelling and jumping and screaming.
Oh yeah, tons of explorative exercises. Yeah, to just like see you let go, release, get dirty, get messy. I think that's one of the things that all the schools want to see is like, see you get messy, be yourself, truly, like strip yourself away from the idea of whatever you had about what you think the school is or everything you are, and just like, let's create. And so it does sound very similar to what John was saying about the Yale callback, for sure.
Yep. All right, that answers that question. Wonderful. We have another question here. What did the panel ask you, not related to your monologues?
In the interview?
Mm-hmm.
So in the interview, this was, a number of years ago. Let me see. They were curious where I was from and what my background was. I remember talking about the cabaret, actually. I mean, one of the other reasons that I wanted to go to grad school was I'm not the kind of person to like sit by the phone and wait for an audition. And I'm always really inspired by like directors like Paul Thomas Anderson. They tend to work with the same actors over and over again in their movies. And that's what I was looking for. I wanted to find my community of people that I could create with, so that I wasn't like, well, I hope that I am what they're looking for with this particular audition. Because even when you get the audition, there are so many other factors, like Brandon had said, that are not in your control. You may give a great audition, but you don't look exactly like what they're looking for. And so you don't book that thing. But obviously, like, I still want to continue to create as an artist. And the beautiful thing about Yale is that it's interdisciplinary. So you have 3 directors every year, 3 playwrights, 5 or 6 dramaturgs, theater designers in all disciplines, TD&P, theater managers. And almost all of the productions that you do at Yale are student produced. You have faculty overseeing these productions, but they're all student created. So you end up having this huge community of people that you can create with. And so that was something that I talked about a lot in the interview. And then it was so present with getting to go see the cabaret production. I mean, this show was so good. And it was all student produced, and it was actually 2 actors who were in the acting program, and I was really blown away by that. So I talked about that a lot. And then also talked about Shakespeare and like the blind spot that I had. So those were some of the things I think that they had mentioned.
Yeah, and this is something Brandon and I mention all the time. For those of you watching, you really need to get a handle on what it is you're blown away by about this school. You know, what it is you're attracted to about this school. And that goes for every single school you're auditioning for. You can clearly hear from John's story, like he was talking to them about what he thought was attractive about that school and based on his experiences and everything. So I think that's a huge through line. Brandon, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, no, yeah, he understood why he wanted to go to that program. Your program attracts me because, and this is what I'm looking for. People love to hear that you have a plan as an artist for yourself, anyways, in a way. They also love to hear how art has affected your life, how art has affected you, and how you want to use your art to continue. I think that's something always free and interesting to understand how to talk about your art and what you want to do with it in these interviews, because they want to know the artist.
Brandon, what did you say? Not monologue related. What did they ask you? What did you say?
Monologue. Oh my gosh, this was 2,000 years ago. Man, okay, so my interview portion, I remember it being like this very, like, to me, it was like very film noir. Like, I walked into the room and it was like really low lit, because now this is the interview portion, and my interview portion is about 11 o'clock at night at this point. It's with, I believe, Richard Feldman and I think maybe Becky Guy. Richard Feldman, both acting teachers there at Juilliard. And I walked in and they're asking me where I was from, what school I went to. And then they had me read a passage from something, I don't know, but what did they ask me? And it was mostly just stuff about myself. I remember, what did I do? Where did I come from? I'd acted professionally before, so asked me about that. They definitely asked me why Juilliard. What did I say to that? Because I didn't know anything about Juilliard.
So Brandon's acting comes into play.
What did
you say?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it was the sense of, I say this to all students, is like, I think when you, in this interview, you tell every school that they're your top choice. You're my top choice, absolutely. Because that's the goal. The goal is to, if they want you, you want to be wanted. If they have financial aid, you want it first. So yes, you are absolutely my top choice. And I don't think it's a lie necessarily, because it could end up being your top choice if you don't get accepted to anything else.
Sure.
So I know I definitely said that you are my top choice.
Not a lie. You got accepted to multiple programs and you chose them. So
yeah.
I remember what I was asked, or at least at least one thing. They definitely said, like, what's your goal? Like, if you came here, what would be the sort of goal 10 years from now? And I remember the leaning in. I was acting the crap out of this line. I was like, I looked Ralph and Richard right in the eyes. Okay, I was in San Francisco just like John. I was like, my goal is to be on stage at the Royal Shakespeare Company in London. And I just said it. I've never said that before in my life. I'd not thought about that or anything, but I was like fully committed. I remember putting my elbows on the table and leaning in and looking both of them.
Of course you did. Of
They were
course
like,
you did.
So you don't know what you're gonna say. It's crazy. We got more questions. Bryn wants to. By the way, thank you, Darius and Juliana, for those questions. Bryn wants to know, when applying to MFA programs, does where you got your BFA matter? Anybody?
I don't think so. I mean, we had people in our program who didn't even have BFAs. Like one of my close friends who's I think right out of undergrad, went to Princeton, and I think she was an English major. Don't quote me on that though. We had people from a lot of different drama programs as well. And then again, it sort of spanned age range as well. We had people that were right out of undergrad, and then people who had taken a few years off in between, and then people who had more substantial years like me and a few other people. Yeah.
Same with us.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's correct, John. I don't think your BFA matters. I think only what it says though is that you have training, you have a foundation. There's a certain caliber of acting that you will be presenting.
Yeah, and then you have a language that you can that is
right.
If it's not universal, you can at least translate with other people.
Definitely vocabulary.
Yes. There's a readiness. There's a sense of generosity. There's a eagerness. A sense of play. I think that's pretty common, regardless of what your training is prior.
Yeah.
Brian, I hope that answered your question. John Travers, love you, gentlemen. Thanks, John. John mentioned it's great to have auditioning experience in the industry. Do you have any recommendations for current college, soon-to-be grads approaching grad school auditions? So let me repeat that. John mentioned it's great to have auditioning experience in the industry. Do you have any recommendations? I suppose he's asking for recommendations regarding audition experience for like seniors in their bachelor's right now who are going to be applying to grad school. Does that make sense?
Essentially people auditioning for the MFA.
Yes. Getting some audition experience that John was talking about.
I mean, obviously, if you have an agent or a manager and you're going out for professional, auditions, that is experience there. But again, like even getting groups of friends together and doing mock auditions can create the same sort of anxiety. I mean, like you have put all this work into this piece and then you're showing it. Sometimes it creates more anxiety actually, because you're showing it to people that you really care about and you want them to like the work. I know in New York, there's at least one workshop facility where you can pay to do classes that often have sort of an audition feel to them. I'm trying to think what else. I mean,
one thing we do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Brandon. Are you
talking
about the master class?
John. No, I was going to, but go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, how to get into drama school. For those of you who are our clients, we do have a private mock auditions, and we'll be doing those. We haven't actually announced them yet for this year. Those will be coming up, but before Thanksgiving, we'll have a round. We might have another round, again, just to get your monologues in front of people you don't know in an environment where, you've got coaches who can give you some solid feedback. So mock auditions is good, and we definitely provide that as well.
Yeah, what John was saying just about like, there are these workshops and these seminars and these things that you could sign up for that have an audition aspect to them. So like on one-on-one in New York City has classes and seminars, either with casting directors or anyone who's usually on the other side of the table, just to see work, see how you present it, give you feedback. Actors Connection is also a good place to go to that has the same seminars with directors, casting directors, teachers, acting teachers, again, with that audition aspect, just to present work and get that feedback.
Do you guys think that, so let's talk about like actorsaccess.com and backstage.com and signing up for casting networks. Those are usually somewhat affordable, maybe $60 a year or somewhere along those lines. And you get to have a profile and get to view all of these like student films, small independent projects, and, you know, different things that are looking for actors. And you can actually submit yourself if you don't have an agent or a manager, and you can actually go to these auditions. And obviously the quality of project is on the spectrum. You know, maybe it's not so great of a quality script, or maybe it's an amazing thing that's unheard of. My point is, like, do you guys think that getting that type of experience, which is a little bit more rapid, right? You're literally seeing the script and auditioning with it within a matter of days, as opposed to college auditions, which is more months of preparation. Do you think that that's valuable experience for someone auditioning this year?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just getting you in the game. It's getting you in the mindset. Absolutely being able to pick up sides and like interpret them, create a character, memorize, like, you know, just it works on all these skills. And yeah, you're just developing different characters as well. Just working on some of these college films. There are thesis projects and thesis films for grad students, MFA. And so some of them do have some great caliber art to them. And so it's absolutely a great way to get your feet wet with not too much at stake in a way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Brandon. It then allows you, like, even if it is a really like not a great project and you maybe don't necessarily want to end up being in it in the end, but even having the audition experience and like having it be not a great audition experience can teach you things. It makes you more flexible for a better audition experience, which obviously the auditioning for drama programs are going to be a little bit more professional. But it definitely flexes that muscle for yourself.
We have one more question. You guys, this has been awesome. Thank you everyone for joining, and for anyone who's just joining after, you know, we hope you got a lot of value. We know you did. John, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Of course, happy to be here.
Yes, and Brandon, thanks for chiming in and just sharing your story. So we have Juliana asks one more question. Do you think there's going to be questions related to the pandemic?
I think as a conversation started, it's something that you can't ignore. It's something that the entire world is going through, and it's extremely affected the arts tremendously, and how we express ourselves, how we work, the outlets that we have. So I think those questions will be more of a check-in and to see if you did anything interesting, if not with your art, were you able to just how your art continued, if anything, I think is a great conversation. And if your art was completely halted, your art was completely halted, because that's with a lot of people. And I think there's no shame in your experience with your art during the pandemic. Just share your truth with that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think like the audition process itself is super different because it's all on Zoom now. I think a lot of things have been affected. You know, theater in New York is still relatively shut down. And like what that means for you after you graduate, and hopefully, obviously, things will get better. But it definitely, you know, will affect for years to come. So again, I think, yeah, it's certainly something to think about how it affects you and what you want to create moving forward from this.
I agree with all that. I also think, you know, it would be smart if I was auditioning this year to check in with the school and ask how they have dealt with the pandemic. In other words, have they had in-person classes yet, or are they still virtual? You know, and that can be something that you can say, hey, look, you know, we don't know where we'll be in the fall of 21, but I know that, you know, I'm also attracted to this school because of how you handled the pandemic. You know, schools have had to deal with this for the first time, just like any of us have had to deal with this for the first time. And so I respect what you've done. And you know, and that can, I guess, bode well for your interest in the school.
And that respect that you're talking about, that'll be coming, that respect that you have for the program and of how they've transitioned during the pandemic is the same respect that they're going to give you guys. They will give. There is so much grace that's going to be on the other side of the table because this is new for everyone. This is new for everyone. The way they're auditioning kids, the way you're auditioning, the way now they have to kind of judge and figure out. It's all new. It's all new. So there's a lot of grace and forgiveness on both sides on how to do this. Your job is to present great work, and their job is to be there and hear you and to see it and feel it. And there's just understand the mentality that they are rooting for you, especially during this time. Especially during this time.
That's a great note to go out on. Any final comments, guys? Unbelievable. Really fun. Really fun. Well, that's all for now. We are signing off on behalf of Brandon and John and How to Get Into Drama School. We thank you for watching. Have an awesome day, everyone.
Yes.
See you guys.
See ya.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Boom, boom, boom.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ain't it? How